everybody, Tina from Move with Courage Careers here, and I'm here to talk to you about not being scared of the ATS. So if you've never heard this term before, we'll talk a little bit about it, but if you are a job seeker right now and you are starting to read the articles, or if you're deep in the trenches of your own job search, you know about the ATS. So I am a certified professional resume writer. I've had a lot of conversations about the ATS, both from behind the scenes and from my clients in the scenes. And so I'm hoping to put everything that I know from my training and conversations I've had from people on the spectrum to really help you feel less scared. Even though I myself am a fan of spooky season in which we're in now, there is no reason to have any more uncertainty or fear for job seekers. So I am really connecting this to a blog I wrote, which you can find below, which is Don't Fear the ATS. Help your resume beat the bots. And it comes with a free guide, which is a sort of very detailed checklist for you to make sure that your resume is ready. So basically what I see is when clients come to me, a lot of times people think that the resume is the starting point, especially if you're doing your job search on your own and you don't really have a lot of support. That's kind of most of the advice and the things that you'll see, and it kind of feels like common knowledge, although we know that, common sense isn't really a thing. But anyways, most people just start with the resume. So they don't really take time to think about their goal. They don't really research companies that they would like to work at. Connected to that, they don't really look at, what they want to leave from their old position, what sort of habits or little sort of values that were in their old company that they do not want moving forward. So they kind of don't really take that time to investigate themselves what they want. And this a lot of times is because maybe they've been laid off, they're under stress. A lot of times we need to detox from that old position too, because we might have some beliefs wrapped up about ourselves that we are working to unwind. So all those pieces are true, but I can tell you that if you come to your resume with a clear vision of your job target and companies that you are excited to add your work to, that's really going to help you having all of that on the front end. Just so that you can target things successfully and be really specific, but also for your mindset, because that is one way to really feel empowered and to remind yourself that it is on your terms, this job search. Or, as I like to say, thanks to Jay Block, my interview coaching teacher, your career campaign. And that's a great way to think about it. A career campaign is on your terms. So anyways, if you are looking into resumes, the first thing you're going to see if you do a little Google search, there are a lot of opinion pieces, a lot of preferential pieces, a lot of things like this around the ATS. You will see figures like 75 to 80% of all resumes are rejected because of the ATS. And that sounds a bit scary. And the ATS also, is able to do an automatic rejection email. And sometimes they don't, and people don't hear, either, but usually you find out right away. And so what I'm working to do here is to get you some information so that that does not happen to you. We want you to have your resume in front of a human so that you can get into the interview, right? The job market is pretty tough, but I don't think where it comes to ATS that it is out to get you. It is really just a software platform that the hiring team inputs their job posting as a parameter, and then they run your resume against that parameter. And so what they're looking for is the percentage of what they want versus what you have. And that idea of what you have is going to be communicated, hopefully, very clearly in your resume. So let's talk a little bit about that. So when we're thinking of this comparison score, another way to say that is you'll see people talk about beating the ATS or getting around the ATS. And trust me, a lot of job seekers have done tricky things. In the past, they would write in keywords 2-point font white up at the top so that it would just scan it in. But now, they're getting wise to that. Even more interestingly, now people are able to put in AI prompts, but hiring teams are ahead of it, and it's not really a good foot to start out on as far as being dishonest. I do understand, though, why people are doing it, because it seems a little bit competitive now, right? The job market. But to speak to the ATS, we really just want to talk to what the employer wants. And they tell you clearly what they want in that job posting. And I'm very surprised sometimes when people come to me, we go through their resume compared to what they've applied to, and a lot of times they don't meet the hard requirements. And so I think there's a misunderstanding there, and I would like to really make this my point one. Only apply to positions that you meet the hard requirements. And I call them hard requirements because they're not as negotiable as the preferred or the desirable. So we're talking experience, certifications, licenses, skills, those pieces. Keep in mind the ATS, when it scans, it can add up automatically your years of experience. So we want to make sure that every application you do, your resume, all of it, meets the hard requirements. If it does not, it will be auto-rejected. Okay, so make sure when you go through this that you know for yourself what that job target is, what you are qualified for. If you are in a situation where you're thinking of an industry change, or maybe you are overqualified or underqualified, so it's not a complete match, that's where you want to lean into networking, skilling up, all those human pieces before you just go direct to an electronic source, right? So try to get a human involved, try to up-level your skills before you just simply apply. Okay, so beyond the required, if you have their desirable or preferable, whatever those kind of flexible terms are, requirements, you want to look to have about 70 to 80% of these. And this is really, we do not want to lie. I see a lot of things on Reddit and elsewhere where job seekers are saying, they lied, nobody noticed, but ultimately, we want to start this new position out for you with the same integrity that you're going to bring every day, right? So if you have 70 to 80% of the desirable, if you have all the hard requirements, that's a good position for you. The next one, number 2, we want you to have a clear, scannable resume format. And sometimes I'll see when clients come to me for a rewrite, they will give me a Canva template that's usually the same one. In their defense, if you Google resume template, it's like one of the first one that comes up. And unfortunately, it's one of the least able to be scanned because it's 2 columns. And the scanner, which basically just parses text, it has trouble. And so it'll jumble pieces. So it could maybe take something over here and jumble it with something over there. But most likely what happens when it jumbles it, it just omits it, which could mean it could omit one of those hard requirements. And so then it would show that you were not, a good person for this job. We don't want that. So we want to have a clean document. There's a lot of white space, hopefully, where you're going to draw people's eyes in. So after it gets through being scanned, a real person can look at it and their eye will be drawn into those things that you do really well, your wins. And that's coming next. But really avoid the template if you can. If you feel like you're going to do a template, which, by the way, would be okay for a networking resume, you could put your QR code to your LinkedIn. And it could be design heavy because you're not submitting it electronically. You'd be handing it to a person. But really, we just want to have a simple document for you, 1 column, and very targeted, and angled around, which is our number 3, your wins. So basically, if you think about the people that are writing job descriptions, job postings, they know what the responsibilities of your job are. In the past, when I was writing my first resume in the late 90s, early 2000s, right, we put responsibilities under the bullet, and that was good enough. But now, we're looking for what do you do above and beyond those responsibilities. And that is kind of reflective of how competitive things are, but also it differentiates you from everyone else. Because if everyone else just puts the job posting responsibility, they're all the same. Kind of like if you run your resume through ChatGPT, it's going to have the same language as everybody else. So they want to see with those wins, what specifically you offer that maybe someone can't, right? That's what we're trying to show them. And so it means if you only have 2 bullets, maybe under your experience, but those bullets are, full of metrics, specific impact, they're very impressive. And most importantly, they're relevant to the role, they're relevant to that position, that's okay. So keep this action and wins focused language. And speaking about being relevant to the role, this is my number 4. It's tricky for some people, and I understand because, when you have a certification or some sort of accomplishment that was really hard won, it is hard to not put it on your resume. It hurts a little bit, right? But we only want to put on your resume what is relevant to that position. We want to make it clear as a bell how you have what they want. And so something that is kind of not in the realm of that role, even though maybe it's impressive, if it can't relate or support, you're going to have to leave it off. But we want everything just this very targeted marketing document to them. And you're answering the question, why should you hire me for the problems you need solved? Okay. That's why we want it very focused. So thinking about this idea, and I see this with, some overqualified people who are going for a role that's a couple beneath them, there is a lot of bias with that. There's already the bias of the word overqualified being code for age, right? But with that, people might think, oh, this person will leave the minute they get another job. There is a lot of bias where they think they can predict your intentions. And so we want to eliminate anything that could ever have bias for you. So if you are overqualified, take off those pieces, even if they're hard won, and you want to write to the level of the role that you're applying. Okay, that's it. Right to that level. And this is where I talked about earlier, if you don't really match, if you're underqualified, you're really going to need to work on your messaging, transferring what you have in the past to explain how you can solve their problems. And if you are not meeting their experience or skill or education requirements, don't bother sending it through electronically. It'll just get kicked out. Network. Okay. And I've seen it done with people who, for example, maybe don't have any degree and a bachelor degree is required. They network in based on their skills and experience. Okay. And so a lot of people, they come worried a little bit to me when they show me the resume because they'll say, gosh, I have just had a really wonky career. I did all these things. They're going to judge me. And everybody has a little twist and turn somewhere, and pieces of that can really reflect strengths. But it is tricky if it's not written well for them to clearly see how this twisty, complicated career path relates to them. Because remember, when they read your resume, they're thinking, what can this person do for me? That's all they're thinking, right? And so I help a lot of people specifically with this. A lot of people who've been working 15 to 20 years, it's not linear because our lives aren't linear. Stuff happens, right? And so that is where I think it's a good thing to invest with a resume writer like me, or just even as you write it yourself, thinking about, how best can I share my story in a way that explains things, especially if you have gaps. And that's where your cover letter is going to come into play and heavy networking. Okay. The last one, number 5, it's really the most important. You will see people on Indeed, all these opinion pieces, they'll say, tailor your resume to the role. And that idea of tailor is how, in the past, tailors would sew your clothes to fit you exactly. We want to sew your resume to fit that role exactly. That's all it means. And so this job posting is, it could be your best friend, really, because it's going to tell you so much. And I have my resume reset event. I actually go through looking through a job posting. And you really want to look for, the obvious ones: education, skill, industry keywords, location even. Your experience pieces, the wins they're looking for, but you can even find culture cues, specific verbs that they want to use, and you're going to incorporate that into your resume. You're going to sew them into your resume so they can also see that you belong there because you're using their language. This is the idea. Keeping in mind that language they've programmed into the parameters that are going to compare your resume. So those are my 5 pieces for you. I really would like to encourage you as you move forward. I know that reading all the news articles around the ATS and the job search, and by the way, also around our news, it's very negative. It's very fear-mongering. Remember, that's how they get clicks. That's how they get, special packages bought. And I also know that with the internet, it really feels sometimes that we're just one person among many, because suddenly we're aware there are so many people in this world. And those pieces really feel true. But I want to remind you that the way you show up, your leadership presence, your specific attributes that, no one else has anywhere, that is really your value, your uniqueness, and the piece that needs to be marketed in your resume, which is essentially your marketing document. So please reach out if you would like any support. I do offer a free career consultation if you're interested in my leadership solutions. On my blog, I have a lot of free websites, and I'm doing a lot more events around the career campaign, so resumes, interviews, LinkedIn, and pieces like that. And have a wonderful day.